People, the cat ladies on Twitter always do this thing like, yikes, my guy, just let people have fun. And then you look at the movies they're putting out and you look at the numbers again, you're like, yeah, but people aren't having fun. I mean, you're putting out all this propaganda. It's not finding an audience. They do this thing. It's this is Alonso, Victor Alonso, and the other one was Leslie Headland, where they're doing this thing where they think, oh, we're gonna get this new audience. We're leaving money on the table if we don't put all this woke pox walks furry otherkin BLT kind of stuff. You identify as something else in the movies, and we're going to get the new audience. You go, oh, okay, so raise your hand in the back of the class. Are you going to retain the old audience? Bigot said what? It's just a simple business question. You've got this old audience who's willing to they're probably in their 40s and 50s on up now, and have got kids and grandkids now, who have supported you since the 70s, even if it was a little before your time. It's like in the 80s, you were watching all that stuff on VHS and on repeat and stuff like that. It's like it was very well enmeshed in the culture, the Star Wars phenomenon. And then the merchandise. Keep in mind, the merchandise sold more than the movies, which is like what usually happens in something that's very successful. But all those people have got kids and grandkids now, and they were willing to go along with Disney for the ride. All Disney had to do was be family friendly. It's like this kind of stuff also applies to Warner Brothers, DC, and all the other things too. It's like you had this generational customer base built in. They go, no, we're going to go for this 1% BLT audience. And no offense if you're in that BLT audience, but you got to recognize just the Venn diagrams of that's a very small customer base. And this is just you think it's just a business, and you go like, yeah, it doesn't really seem like they're following what I would think of as a business, articles of incorporation or whatever. It's like, this is why we go into business and we're shareholder value. It's like, yeah, but you guys aren't doing that. You're doing some kind of weird woke ideology where you're not so concerned with increasing shareholder value, either dividends or stock price or something. You're not expanding, you're not growing the company, you're not issuing dividends. It's like, so what are you doing? Oh, we're pushing propaganda. Oh, that's weird. So you're leaving money on the table and you're chasing this new audience. Are you retaining the old audience? Without the ad hominem. And you go, well, I mean, the simple answer is no, you're not retaining the old audience. So you're not doing this for a business decision. No. I mean, the truth of the matter is, like, by now you got to, kind of wake up to this. To the extent you can talk about this on YouTube, and you got to be very cautious. But these are not business decisions. This is something else. So what is Disney doing wrong specifically? Well, Star Wars and Marvel are dead brands now. Disney killed them. Victoria Alonso, shake up at Disney. The thing is, you almost gotta admire a company that can kill Disney, Star Wars, and Marvel. Not Disney yet. Disney's still. I mean, Disney's the parent company, but when you think of Marvel, you think of one thing. Star Wars, you think of another thing. Disney is the parent company. You think of when you think of Disney, at least if you're of a certain age, you're thinking of was that Dumbo the elephant with the the stuff from pre 80s and 90s I'm trying to think of the girl with the glass slipper, all those, early Hans Christian Andersen type of stories, of the Jungle Book or whatnot, stuff from the pre-1980s. It was a much simpler time, and you go back, it's like, yeah, that was a much better time too. So, I mean, it's amazing when you have what these companies do. It doesn't matter if it's Disney, Amazon, Warner Bros., whoever. They buy these properties, especially with Amazon and Lord of the Rings, and then they destroy them. So they didn't create these things. At one time, Disney was creating things, but now Amazon, Disney, whoever else, they're buying things that other people created, and they're just using them as vehicles to push this kind of globalist propaganda. And in the absolutely destroy. Hey, you got Willow, you got oh god, what's that movie with Henry Cavill, the Witcher, and they did the spin-off, The Blood Rain, with some chick, and it's the opening scene and all these things is a pox-walks girl in a bar who's beating up a blonde guy. It's that was the opening scene in three of these streaming shows. It's even in Rings of Power. It's the intolerant, bigoted, blonde-haired guy, and he has to be put in his place by the pox-walks person. Oh, that's weird, because I saw that in 3 streaming shows. Oh, it's just coincidence. It's oddly enough, it was in that scene was in the first Avatar too. They really, there was a blonde man who was in a bar and he was slapping around some woman, because that happens every day. It happens every day. Thank God someone was there to stop these evil blonde men. Which is, see that you want to maybe show somebody else. We're not bigoted, but you are, because you're only showing this one blonde group of people. Anyway, they're not retaining the old audience. And it is, it's like, it is something to say that you're responsible for killing Star Wars and Marvel to change the association in people's minds, to have something that, like, to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. It's like you had something that 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds would give to their kids and their grandkids. All you had to do was continue Disney, and they're like, no, we're gonna F it to death. Why would you do that? Because we're friggin' lizard people. What do you want? I mean, that's what it is. Anyway, so the thing is, it's all mental soy slop anyway. It's better that they kill the future of these cultural Bolshevik propaganda films. So, people can show their kids the old stuff if they want to. And then I started thinking about that. I'm like, or maybe not, maybe just read the kids some Aristotle. like, like Disney and Hollywood in general, you start thinking about it, you go like, oh, at one time there was no Disney, there was no Hollywood. People had books. You could read your kids Mark Twain or Plato, or, there's there's other things you could expose your kids to. It's like, if you taught the kids some Latin and Greek in the time they would be watching a Disney, mental soy slop, like, what would be the better use of the kids' time? It's like, yeah, but that actually is a society that requires work. And you start looking at where we are now and like what it would take to turn around. You're like, maybe there's a better path that might be the softer, gentler path. It might be uphill and require some sweat, but it's still the softer, gentler path, but it doesn't seem like it. Like, there's a different direction society can go in. We don't actually need the bread and circuses of Hollywood, like, at all. The thing is, it's always been propaganda, but I will say before the 70s, roughly, like, Hollywood in total was somewhat balanced. But after that, and the thing is, the earlier you go back, Hollywood was a much better portrayal. But it's always going to be someone's version of propaganda. But after, I think, the 70s, if you're I don't know, a fan of aficionado of Hollywood, they started to kind of go mask off, and they realized, well, that we have this perfect vehicle to push globalist values to people who are not thinking critically, and who, the more there's a study done that the more TV people watch, the less critical thinkers they are. They have a harder time distinguishing fact from fiction, because they're seeing stuff on TV and they think, oh, this is a somewhat accurate portrayal. They don't think it's like, they're just not thinking. They're seeing it. Their brain is completely tricked, and you realize, like, oh, maybe, like, we don't need to watch this kind of TV at all. It's like the rabbit hole goes deeper and deeper when you look at all of TV and think, oh, like, it seems like it's all, unless it's made by us and our people, it's like it's all propaganda, all of it, even the early stuff. I mean, at least the early stuff was a lighter touch. Anyway, they had this perfect vehicle to push propaganda. They wanted to destroy a nation, and by using movies, it was a perfect way to do it. And if you look around this current situation, you're like, oh, yeah, they did what they set out to do. So what a heavy video this turned out to be. So where Disney is now is they're making movies that are bombing or underperforming. I mean, there's a whole string of, like, you could probably name a half dozen movies that have lost $50 million from Disney. But financially, Disney overall is doing fine because they have older movies and merchandise that is still making money. The stuff from the 1990s is probably more popular with kids than the new stuff. The 1990s was kind of peak Disney. Back in the days of VHS and DVDs, was a huge, Disney was in everyone's household. They had, I don't know, the Lion King and the prince, various seven dwarves and princesses and those kind of stories. Anyway, so and Disney could Snow White and Seven Dwarfs. I don't think of Disney could rebrand if they wanted to and go back to circa 1985 to 1995 and just end all this anti-white woke experiment and globalist propaganda. But they're not going to do that. They're in this to the end because they're demons in human disguises. They'll burn Disney to the ground because globalism is their religion. At one time, Disney was vaguely Christian and family friendly. They're anti-Christian now, and they're anti-family. They're on the left-hand path, the sinister path versus the dexterous path. Their values are not what most people consider family values. It's okay to look at people and go, oh, we have different values, we have different worldviews, and the media, mainstream social media, all of Hollywood, everyone is saying that the majority, us, we're intolerant, istophobic because we have different values. No. And the thing is, even if we're the extreme minority, it's like we're still right. It doesn't matter when it's like you're one person among a million sheep. It's like you're still not the sheep, and the sheep are wrong. And that's what Disney is. It's Disney, CNN, and MSNBC. It's all this mainstream media, social media. It's like they've permeated the culture and they brainwash people. It's like it could be a billion wrong people to one correct person, but you know you're right. You know we're right and they're wrong. It's not hubris and lack of self awareness. It's like we know it. We've seen because we've done some critical thinking. It's like we're not. You know how I know we're right? One of the reasons is because we're over target because we're catching flack. The anti-aircraft fire goes to aircrafts that are approaching the target. We get deplatformed, censored, debanked, kicked off mainstream social media. We're the ones who are over the target. They're the ones who have values that are in accord with Bank of America, CNN, Disney, Warner Brothers, Amazon. They're not over target. They're just the useful idiots. We're right. And it's like, even if we're one person, it's like, we're absolutely right. It's okay to say that their values, these are evil people, and their values, everything they're doing is wrong, and we're right. It's like, when you're right, you might as well start telling people. Like, if you know you have the truth, it's like you got to share it with people. Anyway, so they have a different worldview from most people because, like I said, they're Luciferians, and they're catering to this 1% and assuming that the cattle will go along for the ride. They're not selling to you, Mr. 20-year-old, 30-year-old, 40-year-old on up person. They're trying to sell to your kids and grandkids because they want the generational brainwashing. They want to, and with the libs of TikTok, doing the Lord's work, showing you what's going on in schools. It's between schools, media, social media, and Hollywood. They're doing this incremental brainwashing of kids to try to get these kids on board with this new stuff. And if you let your kids watch this stuff, it's child abuse, but it's so permeated the culture. Like, there's no winning. The schools it's not a separate issue. It's the same issue because it's all propaganda. Like, there's no winning by staying within 8 hours of globalist government school propaganda. It's like the only way to do it is to remove that school propaganda. It's like the only way to do that is set up your own schools. Like, just set up your own towns. Why don't ya? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know this stuff sounds a little bit crazy, but it's like, it's really not. Because, that's how pervasive and malicious the propaganda is. Between the schools and the mainstream Hollywood culture, it's like, you're not going to defeat this with an hour of family time a day when it's like it's that other 10 hours a day of propaganda. It's too much. Like, you have to turn it off and close the schools and create a different type of school. Anyway, they're trying to incrementally brainwash the kids, except that the movies aren't doing too well now, so the audience appears to be slowly dropping out for them. So this lady was around for the 2008 Iron Man, which was a solid start because Robert Downey and Gwyneth Paltrow had great chemistry together. All they had to do was keep going in that vein. It had some woke elements in it, but it still worked. And the thing is, they couldn't and wouldn't make the 2008 Iron Man today. I think that was one where Scarlett Johansson was in it, and she was they introduced her in that movie. She was a simple character. She was a hot chick who played a super James Bond, spy, secret agent kind of thing. She was sexy, and that was 50% of the character, because the stuff's not Shakespeare. It was people in spandex shooting lasers out of their twats. It was just silly fun. All they had to do was continue with that. People don't want BLT characters who are married with a kid they bought from a woman, and then the mom is not in the picture. Those are not our values. Those are Hollywood values, which is one of the reasons the Eternals bombed. They had that scene in it. Or it's just one of the reasons. There's a whole lot to all these kind of movies. Or the Panda movie was Chinese characters set in Canada or something. It was super woke, diverse, except they sexualized the kids a little bit, and the kids were portrayed as disrespectful to their parents. That's just not what people want to see, and it lost $165 million, which is, that money starts to add up. But you look at how successful Disney is with their old properties, and you realize, like, so they lost $500 million last year. And like, did it affect the bottom line? No, they actually made money. They lost $500 million from Marvel stuff, yes, or even from Marvel, Disney, that branch of it. But it's like Disney's an umbrella company. It's like in total, they're still their graph is going up and up and up. Probably the theme parks and the old properties are effectively subsidizing their woke propaganda. So people are finally starting to see what monsters Hollywood really is. And I don't mean that like hyperbolically with a laugh. I mean, Hollywood's actually evil, like biblically evil, Sodom and Gomorrah evil. It's a machine to push globalist propaganda and destroy the West. And if somebody said that 20 years ago, I would have thought it was an exaggeration. It's really not. Imagine 40 years ago, they said that in a Disney movie, you would have had two men together with the kid. What is 40 years ago? 1983? Yeah, so in 1983, you explain what the Eternals, the scenes in the Eternals is. And they would look at you like, I don't really think that's going to catch on. It doesn't seem like that's people's values. And not in 1983, and it's not people's values in 2023 either. The modern counter is that they say, oh, values change. It's the 10,000 angry Twitter people, except they really haven't changed that much. The laws have changed, and Hollywood has gone mask off, but people are starting to understand that the people don't run the country. These other creatures actually are pulling the strings, and people are just kind of along for the ride, passively allowing this to happen to them until they wake up, which is the reason you go from one emergency to another to keep you all constantly off base in the state of high anxiety. And then they're just throwing all this bread and circuses distractions at you, just distracting you with all these shiny objects about just nothing, non-important issues, and the important issues get buried. And when an important issue comes out, it's like, oh, a distraction comes out. Oh, that's weird. You think, it can't be happening because the media didn't tell me about it. Yeah, thank God now the white pill is alt media. And alt media is actually pretty powerful. In the pop culture area of the world, it's like the Phantom Menace in that area. It's not nothing. Like, people know who the Phantom Menace are. Hollywood knows of the Phantom Menace, and they might laugh it off, but it's like it has an effect on Hollywood for sure. It reaches out to hundreds of thousands of people, maybe even millions of people. But it's also reaching out to the target audience of people who are into this kind of, who would be spending money in Hollywood. And then the Phantom Menace is probably hundreds of thousands of people on YouTube, but then it spreads out to millions of people on Twitter and other platforms. It's like you're making a difference. You can see it happening throughout the social media. But now, even if your head in the sand, asleep in the Matrix, you got to see that Disney is rotten, that all Hollywood is rotten. It's a propaganda machine to push globalist values. What percentage of people in America or around the world are into this BLT stuff? Not many. So doesn't it seem odd that Disney is still pushing something that most people find abhorrent? Doesn't it seem weird for a public company? Doesn't it sort of activate your almas? And when you say that, the immediate thing on social media is ad hominem, straw man, and deflection. When you say, like, yeah, these aren't our values, and they will just immediately attack you instead of attacking the argument. And you look at Disney, you look at the people who are pulling the strings at Disney, and they're in the public face at Disney. And there was that interview with a bunch of people who was they were doing like a video call, and for some reason it was public, and they're talking about they all have BLT kids and they're poxwalks, furry other kids. They want representation, and you're like, yeah, but you look at the numbers. This is like 1% of people. It's a very small percentage of people. It seems like there's a massive overrepresentation of people who are at Disney. And these are the ones who are calling the shots, and there's a correspondingly massive overrepresentation in Hollywood in the Disney movies, and it's not connecting with people like that. Just that Eternal scene where you had two dudes with a kid, and people asking like, "So where's the mom?" Because moms and dads are our values; those are our family values. Like, oh, well, we have different values. Yeah, but you guys are like less than 5%. So why are you pushing this? And that, like, specifically, like, what percentage of people want to see that? It's not adding up until it starts making sense. And then once it makes sense, it all starts making sense. And then, once you go down the rabbit hole, like, the they live glasses, they never come off. It's a one-way journey. And you wouldn't want to go back to sleep again anyway. You start looking at this and you go like, more and more of this stuff, you see the propaganda everywhere, and you realize like, oh, it's kind of always been propaganda for like 70 years. Yeah, like post-war, World War II, 1940. Yeah, basically. I mean, you look at more and more of it, and it's like, oh, you have to go back further and further to see less and less propaganda. But you look at this stuff now, and you juxtapose it to something 70 years ago. Like, values change. Not exactly. Hollywood is this machine that is changing, brainwashing people. And like the whitest of white pills is social media and alt social media to start pushing back against this in some small way. And it would be sweet if people with bigger platforms would get a little bit more base, but I mean, they're trapped in a golden cage. Like, you're not going to see the Mark Dice's, Salties, Paul Joseph Watsons actually say anything that matters because they're making just so stupid amounts of money on social media. But it's a trip to see like the Odyssey live streams. Those are growing. Like, even I've been paying attention to Odyssey for a year or two, and I'm seeing live streams that are just, you start off with a dozen people, and then you get 200 people, or you got 500 people, and the money is coming in these people's donations. And like, there is an alternative. There is a desire for based free speech out there where people are free to talk about anything. Which means probably someone's going to buy Odyssey so they can shut it down. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. See you guys. Thanks for the support on re-support on Buy Me a Coffee. Subscribe, start Cash App. I'm like, why are they supporting your silly little YouTube channel? I think it's the Odyssey and Bit Chute that is the support is coming in for. But I do sincerely thank everyone. I'll see you guys all next episode.